It was an exciting week for Quinnipiac sports here in Hamden, Connecticut. After taking home the MAC regular season championship this year, the men's soccer team looked to add a MAC playoff title to its resume. Would reigning champs Rider get in its way? And speaking of reigning champs, the women's rugby team started tournament play this past Saturday. What are the Bobcats' chances of repeating as national champions? And finally, our two analysts give their predictions and our Game of the Week segment. This is Bobcat Breakdown. Hello everyone, and welcome to this week's edition of Bobcat Breakdown. I'm your host, Kyle Levasseur, and sitting next to me are our two analysts, Andrew Badillo and Maury Hirsch-Gordon. And guys, with both of you being seniors, this past weekend marked the last Quinnipiac soccer game either of you will cover for Q30, and I don't think it disappointed. How about you?
Well, first of all, it's Hirsch-Gordon, Kyle.
Excuse me.
No, I wasn't disappointed. I thought it was a great semifinal weekend. Weather was absolutely phenomenal. There wasn't a cloud in the sky on Sunday afternoon. It felt like a summer day. I know we were talking before the game.
2 years ago, much better.
Yeah, much better. It was like snowing 2 years ago. But no, I definitely didn't disappoint. Lived up to expectation, and Quinnipiac just fell a little bit short.
Sorry about the last name mishap. I'm used to getting it too with Levasseur. But let's jump right into it. Number 1 seeded Quinnipiac fell to number 2 seeded Rider by a score of 3-1. The Bobcats weren't able to take the lead after a Rider goal with 3 minutes left in the first half. Quinnipiac first team All-MAC member Connor McCoy tied things up 5 minutes into the second half. However, Rider responded with 2 more goals, becoming back-to-back conference playoff champions. Which leads us to our first topic, Maury. With Quinnipiac being the higher seed, did they lose to Rider, or did Rider beat Quinnipiac?
No, I think Rider beat Quinnipiac, and I think it was in dominant fashion. I think Andrew would agree with me on this one. 11 shots to 6 shots. Quinnipiac's game plan coming into it had to be to limit the offensive firepower from Rider. In the semifinal game, Canisius, which averaged the most shots per game on goal in the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference in just about 16, 9th in the country in that category. Quinnipiac held the Golden Griffs to just 8 shots. Rider coming in 2nd in the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference in shots per game with 15. It didn't hold it to single digits. Rider had 11 shots. And even this was all really without Christian Flath. I know he did play. I know he had 2 assists. A great player from Rider, one of the greatest players in Rider program history, but he didn't start and he didn't play a majority of the game. So, Rider definitely won even without its best player.
Yeah, Maury, echoing everything that you said, the player that really stood out for me for the Rider Bronx was Jose Aguinaga. He was absolutely unstoppable for the Bronx on the outside of the field, just burning the Quinnipiac right and left backs. What they did a great job of, guys, is not attacking the middle of Quinnipiac's defense, which is its strength in Connor McCoy and Yeppe Ari. I know Yeppe Ari did make that mistake on the first goal. That's just a mental mistake. It's not a physical mistake. But Aguinaga, the rest of the Bronx on offense did a tremendous job on the outside of the field, crossing balls in and just wreaking havoc inside the box.
So after this game, Quinnipiac has currently lost its last 4 games against Rider and has gotten knocked out of the MAC tournament by Rider the last 2 years. Andrew, how did each team's style of play affect the outcome of this game?
Well, you see, Quinnipiac, their style of play is defensive. They really pride themselves on defense. And this year, Eric DaCosta had probably one of his most difficult jobs in retooling that defense, bringing in an entirely different back line, including your goaltender.
Very deserving of the MAC Coach of the Year award.
Exactly. Rider, in turn, they're a very offensive team. They work a lot of players up front, and you saw it. They work balls to the outside, and they cross them in. I know that their goaltender won MAC goalkeeper of the year. However, they're much better known for their offense rather than Quinnipiac historically.
A ton of weapons for Rider. Aguinaga and Flath, just to name a couple. Bouet, the freshman from France, what a tremendous job he did. 3 really tremendous offensive pieces. But I look at the coaching here, and not to discredit Eric DaCosta and the job that he has done, because I know we've talked about it all season long. 4 regular season championships out of the last 5 years is nothing to shake your head on. But when you look at the head coach for Rider University, Charlie Inverso, over 430 wins to just 46 losses at the junior college level, led his teams to 5 junior college national championships. So, you know, when I look at that, he's a great game manager. He knows how to manage in games. He knows the right substitutions. He has key pieces off the bench in order to fill, you know, the starters' roles when the pieces off the bench come into the games. So I think Charlie Inverso did a tremendous job in preparing his rider team, in knowing how to win, and clearly they knew how to win because they won it a year ago and they followed it up with 2 straight.
It was obviously an incredible turnaround from when the team was just 1-5-3 in the MAC a season ago. But Andrew, which player was the most valuable in getting them back to the MAC championship game?
It's got to be Eamon Whalen for me, guys. Quinnipiac hasn't had a dynamic offensive player like him since Marshall Baker a couple of years ago. And in fact, Whalen scored 11 goals this year. The last Quinnipiac player to score more goals than Whalen was Graciano Brito in 2008. 2008, that is just under a decade ago. That's an incredible number. And coming into the season, DaCosta didn't think that Whalen was going to be the guy up front. It could have been Rashawn Daly. You could have seen James Doig step up in the midfield and maybe poke through a couple more goals. But Whalen was impressive, and it really, guys, wasn't because of Rashawn Daly facilitating for him. Eamon Whalen scored 4 unassisted goals this year. He knows how to finish. He knows how to create chances for himself. He was as dynamic a player as this Quinnipiac team has had in a long time.
Yeah, Kyle, I'm not going to discredit Eamon Whalen. I think 4 game-winning goals speaks for itself, over 30% of the team's goals. But I think I'm going to have to go with Connor McCoy on this one, the freshman. First team, all-rookie selection, just like Eamon Whalen. But here's where Connor McCoy sticks out a little bit more than Eamon Whalen. Eric DaCosta builds his teams from the back, and he always talks about that his teams are defensive-minded. Eric DaCosta did play here from 1998 to 2001 on the First Division I Quinnipiac men's soccer team, led them to the NEC tournament for the first time. So when he builds his teams through defense, McCoy resembles a lot of what Toby Esch was. Toby Esch won 3 regular season championships, led Quinnipiac to its first NCAA tournament. I see a lot of Toby Esch in Connor McCoy. And the team had 7 shutouts, 2 shy of the program record for a single season. And I think McCoy anchored that all season long.
So here's my argument to that. Defense is a committee effort. Yepiare and McCoy, arguably, if you take Yepiare out of that, who knows how well McCoy works in the middle, because obviously center defenders have to work well with each other, communication.
Yep.
Chris Yakovidis was tremendous in goal.
Yep.
He's the one who's stopping the shots. Eamon Whalen is the guy up front who is putting the ball in the net for Quinnipiac.
Well, just like Eamon Whalen, like you said, had the most goals for a Quinnipiac player since 2008, when I'm looking at the last 3 regular season championships for Quinnipiac, in 2013, it had a 10-goal scorer, much like Eamon Whalen with 11, and then it had 1 4-goal scorer, and then after that, it only had 1 2-goal scorer. In 2014, much like 13, it had a 10-goal scorer, a 5-goal scorer, and then the 3rd leading scorer only had 1 goal. Here this year, Whalen had a big supporting cast. He was at 11, much like the 10 and 10 in the 2 previous years, and the second one with 5, which was Ryan Scheiderman. But the next 4 pieces, or the next 5 players actually, 2 had 4 goals, 2 had 3 goals, and 1 had 2. And one of them, James Doig, who had 3 goals, was out for half of the conference season. So I think he had a much bigger supporting cast this year, which is why I chose Connor McCoy.
Just very quick, one last point. You're leaving out 2015 last year, where no one on the team scored goals.
I just threw that year out of the way.
Yeah, no one scored, so I'm putting a little bit more weight on Whalen this year as my MVP, because what a drastic turnaround. 11 goals from Rashawn Daly, I think, who scored 2 goals last year and led the team. So that is why I picked Whalen. But McCoy, obviously, a very good candidate as well.
Well, guys, there's obviously a long list of young players on the roster, with Eamon Whalen, your MVP, Andrew, and 8 other freshmen and 9 other sophomores. It seems like the future will be bright. But we're now going to go to Nick Colon, who was able to catch up with James Doig.
This isn't just about football, this is more.
Coming across the pond to further his education and soccer career was a sizable life choice for Quinnipiac men's soccer captain James Doig, but over time it proved to be the perfect fit for the man from Liverpool.
I made a highlight video and I sent it off to many coaches throughout the States, and Coach DaCosta was one of the coaches that got back to me. What got me a lot was the fact that the motto is "You'll never walk alone," which is also the motto for my home team club. So that was at the final stages I found that out, and that was really like, this is for me.
Doig went on to start nearly every game of his freshman and sophomore season that he was active for, and looked to keep the tempo going into his 3rd campaign.
Going into my junior year was exactly the same as going into my sophomore and freshman year, in terms of I'm going to win everything I can. I wanted to do everything. I wanted to win the MAC title. I wanted to go to nationals again and get another ring on my finger.
However, the season didn't turn out how the number 9 would expect. Doig picked up a season-ending leg injury in the team's second game against the University of Connecticut.
I think last year was really hard for James because it came so early in the season, and it was never a really definitive answer on whether or not he would make it back for the season. So at some point, I had to make that decision for him.
Doig powered through physical therapy to be ready for his senior season. He was second in the team in points before picking up another injury against MAC rival Monmouth.
I hit the floor and I felt me shoulder pop. And I felt like it was out of place, and then I rolled onto my back and I felt it pop back in. And I was like, oh no.
For Doig to go down and not come back up is usually out of the ordinary for him. He's usually a pretty tough person. Once he was on the page that he was going to be able to come back, he definitely dove into rehab and getting everything done full force, that he was there almost every day.
Fearing for the end of his senior season, Doig rushed a 6-week-long prognosis to be back in training after only 2 weeks. The team ultimately won the regular season, and Doig will be available for the first postseason game on Friday against Canisius.
I've played, this will be my 3rd season with 3 MAC titles and hopefully 2 NCAA appearances.
For QNN, Nicholas Colon.
When we come back, we've got even more fall sports playoffs to talk about. And is there anyone that can get in the way of Becky Carlson's rugby team? Finally, what are the chances of a MAC championship from the women's volleyball team? Stick with us. Things are just getting started here on Bobcat Breakdown.
Coming up on Bobcat Breakdown.
Coming up on Bobcat Breakdown.
And welcome into Studio 125.
So what? So what? If you score 40 points in a basketball game, we all know you play Quinnipiac Intramurals. We all know you love to shoot the rock.
Well, if you think that's the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard, what I'm about to say, I guess, is going to be pretty ridiculous in your book. But I'm going to say yes, there is a controversy. I'm
getting ready to punch the ball as it lands right in front of another Monmouth player.
Coming up on hashtag that. We are your source for Quinnipiac's entertainment news.
Welcome back to Bobcat Breakdown. Becky Carlson's rugby team is 1 win away from returning to the national championship. Standing in its way is number 3 seeded Army this Friday at West Point. Andrew, can Army spoil Quinnipiac's chances of returning to the big dance?
Absolutely not, Kyle. I don't think anything is getting between this rugby team and the national championship. This team is angry. They're frustrated. It all started back with that Castleton win where they beat them by 200-plus points. The amount of flack that they got on Twitter for that, they weren't happy about it. They just handed Penn State their first collegiate loss in 5 years. This team is on a mission to get back to the national championship game and repeat.
Yeah, I definitely agree with everything that Andrew has to say. I'm not going to sit here and talk about it for a long time, but Maggie Miles, Alona Marr, Emily Roscoff, the list goes on. This team will dominate. We'll see them on Sunday afternoon in the national championship game.
So with the rugby team being the only team to ever win a national championship here at Quinnipiac, what would it mean to the university if they were to win another one?
I'll start. Yeah. Well, I have 2 answers. I think it would be a lot for the rugby program in the rugby world, but I don't think it would mean a lot to the school.
Okay.
And here's my reason. Hear me out. Not a lot of money goes into this program. Not a lot of money is made from this program. Clearly, they don't have a home field. They've been on the road the entire season. It's not that big of a sport. So I don't think that the school really cares. I think it would be great if they won another national championship. I don't want to discredit the job that Becky Carlson, her entire staff, the program has done to get back to this point, to win in such dominating fashion like it has. But I don't think from an athletics point of view from the university, it advances the program in any way, shape, or form.
I agree with you that it won't advance them right away, but what it does is it starts discussion. It starts discussion as to what this school can do to further this program, and we're already seeing it. The women's sports teams on this campus are absolutely dominant. Starting with the fall teams, volleyball this year, no one thought that they were going to do anything close to what they've done. This team was absolutely down in the cellar of the MAC the last 3 years, even in its program history in the cellar, wherever they played. Women's soccer, MAC championship game this year after almost making the MAC playoffs last year. Field hockey in the Big East, one of the top 2 conferences in field hockey. Rugby, playing for their national championship. They won it, playing for potentially another national championship. They won it last year. Women's cross country is dominant. Women's tennis hasn't lost in who knows when. Women's hockey, women's basketball, the list goes on and on for these women's teams. The school really starts needing to notice how, really, what the riches that they have with the women's programs at this school.
The rugby team deserves the respect and a little bit more respect on campus, but from an entire athletic point of view, Greg Amodio says, you know what, we need basketball, we need hockey, we need other big sports to do a really good job, because those are the programs and the teams that, if win championships, will get Quinnipiac to the Atlantic 10 and to the Big East.
Well, this game definitely is a huge semifinal. We'll see how they do this Friday. But, Andrew, you did say that volleyball has been in the cellar since the program started, and it definitely has been the best season Quinnipiac volleyball has ever had. The Bobcats finished the regular season with a 19-12 overall record and an 11-7 conference record. Both marked program records for the most wins in a season. In fact, this season is the first time Quinnipiac has ever had a winning record since the school added the sport in the year 2000. Quinnipiac enters the MAC tournament as the number 3 seed and will take on number 6 seeded Niagara this Friday. Maury, despite what happens, is this season already a success?
Kyle, it was a success when it won game number 4, when it won game number 5, when it won game number 6. Every win this team has had past game number 3, it has been a success. I don't care if this team doesn't get a point in the first round of the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference playoffs. This year was a success. This year was unheralded. This year, wasn't seen by anyone ever.
ESPNW did a story on it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's how unfathomably, this is unbelievable. It's one of the greatest stories at this university in terms of athletics. 10-85 combined since they entered the MAC coming into this year. Now they have 19 wins. I mean, it's Cinderella story, even if who knows how far they'll go in the tournament, but it's a Cinderella story.
This team has a lot to be proud of.
When I talked to Chris Saplinski and Emma Ogden before the season started in a preview piece, they said their goal was just to prove people wrong. I think they've definitely done that so far. But they do face Niagara this Friday, a team they lost to twice in the regular season. Do you see Niagara winning a 3rd time against Quinnipiac?
I don't. It's really hard to beat a team 3 times in one season. I think Quinnipiac will have its A game. Niagara has to make a long trip from Buffalo to Fairfield, where the conference tournament will be held. Quinnipiac is, very close by. It's in its backyard, Fairfield. So I think Quinnipiac will come out with a sense of vengeance. I think it'll come out with a sense of urgency. I think it's going to come out and say, hey, look, we're the 3rd seed in this conference for a reason. We deserve to be in the semifinals. We deserve a bye, honestly, in the conference tournament. So I think it's going to blow Niagara out of the way.
I'm going to disagree. I'm going to say that Niagara can beat Quinnipiac. I agree with you that it's very hard to beat a team 3 times. However, Niagara comes into the game. They played a very good game against Fairfield. They lost 3-2. It was the first time in the MAC this year that Fairfield has gone 5 sets with a team. Niagara was the team to do that. And also, Quinnipiac is 0-3 in their 3 previous games heading into the playoffs. They're limping down the stretch. I don't know. It's going to be a very good game. However, both matchups between these teams this year have been extremely close in terms of the sets. Niagara won the second matchup 3-1. However, all the sets were very close. It's going to be a very exciting game. I don't think Quinnipiac should get down on themselves. We talked about it a little bit a couple minutes ago. Quinnipiac can't get down on themselves no matter what happens in this game. The season was an absolute tremendous success.
So, Andrew, obviously, if you don't think they're going to beat Niagara, their chances of making the MAC playoff championship are slim. But, Maury, quickly, how great are their chances of making this championship game?
I don't think they have a great chance to make the championship game. I think they have a very good chance to make the semifinals. When you look at the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference standings, just 2 games separates the 2 seed from the 6 seed. So there's a lot of parity there in the middle of the conference outside of Fairfield, which blew everybody away. I think that Quinnipiac, I put it at a 20% chance, has a chance to get to the conference championship game. I think if it gets to the semifinal, anything can happen because it will have played a game already and it will be familiar with the court because the 1 or the 2 seed, whoever Quinnipiac does play, will have a bye. So it will, it won't have played the day before, so Quinnipiac will be a well-oiled machine.
Really quick, I think if they win against Niagara, I think they do make the championship game.
Interesting. All right, well, when we come back, we'll go over the opening weekends for the men's and women's basketball teams. And of course, Maury and Andrew will choose their winners in our Game of the Week segment. Don't go anywhere, we'll be right back.
Coming up on Bobcat Breakdown.
Coming up on Bobcat Breakdown.
And welcome into Studio 125.
So what? If you score 40 points in a basketball game, we all know you play Quinnipiac Intramurals. We all know you love to shoot the rock.
Well, if you think that's the most ridiculous thing you've ever heard, what I'm about to say, I guess, is going to be pretty ridiculous in your book. But I'm going to say yes, there is a controversy.
Line, getting ready to punch the ball as it lands right in front of another Monmouth player.
Coming up, and hashtag that. We are your source for Quinnipiac's entertainment news.
It's 9:30 Eastern, and you know what that means. Sports Pause is on the air.
Ball played up the middle. Iman Whalen with a little cheat off the pipe.
Preseason just boils down to going after another national championship and not necessarily focusing on the one before.
MJ, it is time for our favorite part of the show. It's the top 5 plays of the week, brought to you by B&D Deli, home of the Q-Dog.
Let's talk about the first play you want to break down.
Yeah, let's break it down right away.
But the one name I'm going to throw out there is a freshman, Mika Maples.
Thanks for sticking with us on Bobcat Breakdown. The men's and women's basketball teams started their seasons this past weekend on opposite sides of the spectrum. The men's team fell to the University of Vermont 94-70 in its home opener. The women's team, on the other hand, start its season 2-0 after beating Florida Gulf Coast at home and Dayton on the road. Guys, let's break out the whiteboards and get to our first topic. With 14 points against Florida Gulf Coast and 11 points against Dayton, is redshirt senior Adelie Martucci the next Maria Napolitano?
Suspense is
Andrew, it seems like you're first.
Yes, I mean, Adelie Martucci. If you look in terms of growth amongst both players, it's very, very similar. I know me and you could argue about production on the court and leadership qualities. I think that for both of these players, they're very similar. Adelie Martucci, while she might be a little bit more reserved in terms of her leadership qualities, Maria Napolitano was very outspoken as a leader. Their production on the court is extremely similar, and actually Martucci is a better shooter from the floor. I know Napolitano was known for her three-point shooting prowess. However, Martucci on paper is better throughout her career. 30%, 38%, 27%, 38% from freshman year to senior year. For Napolitano, 29%, 32%, 33%. She played 3 years. So the growth, the numbers are there. I think Martucci, because they play the gold rush, you're not going to see one player become drastically better than the other, but what they bring to the table is extremely similar in their leadership and their production on the court.
Well, Trish told me in the preseason that Quinnipiac was going to play this gold rush. They haven't played it so far, and I think that's because of the level of competition it's played. Florida Gulf Coast and Dayton, two tremendous teams. Florida Gulf Coast has won an NCAA tournament game for the last couple years, and Dayton made that tremendous run that we all remember to the Elite Eight when they lost to UConn. But I think Adelaide Martucci is better than Maria Napolitano. She can shoot off the bounce. She's a lot quicker. She can guard 1 through 3, much like Maria. Maria was more catch and shoot. She was more of like a stocky, stable player. Maria, big, strong body, could guard the 3 or the 4, but Martucci is just more versatile.
Now, with such a talented roster, and like you said, Trish told you that they will play the Gold Rush eventually, does it even matter who Trisha Fabry starts? I want a yes or a no from both of you guys. All right. Maureen, do you want to go first?
Yeah, I don't think it really matters, Kyle. I think the best players are going to play at the end of the game, and that really shows how the level of confidence a coach has in a player is if the player is playing at the end of the game during the crunch time minutes, when it needs to make free throws, when it needs to get big time stops. You saw it on Sunday afternoon against Dayton, Andrew. Carly Fabry is the starting point guard of this team. She rarely turns the ball over, but she wasn't having a good day, and she admitted it actually today in practice. Brittany Martin, who turns the ball over a decent amount, despite the level of offense that she can bring to this team, she had a great game. 9 points, 3 assists to just 1 turnover, and she was getting those late minutes on Sunday afternoon in the key come from behind win against Dayton.
Trisha Fabry could throw out 5 bench players to start the game. She could pull them after 15 seconds, and it's not going to matter. She goes in there with a game plan. I know she hasn't used the Gold Rush this year. She's going to use the Gold Rush in MAC play. She comes into games preparing to use her Gold Rush, using clock, matchups with players. The last thing on her mind is who's going to start the game.
All right, guys, let's transition to the men's team, and I want you to use a hashtag for this one. How would you describe your level of concern after the men's basketball team's loss to Vermont?
Catching me off guard. I didn't know we were doing hashtags.
So think about this one. It was their second year in a row that they lost to UVM. They lost 83-70 the year before, and I would just want a quick explanation of your hashtag.
I'll start with mine first while he's finishing up. I'm concerned.
Hashtag knew it.
Man, oh man, this Quinnipiac men's basketball team can't guard a stretch 4. Anthony Lamb, who averaged 30 points and 17 rebounds in high school from Rochester, New York, torched Quinnipiac, had 20-plus points in his college debut. Abdoulaye Bundu, Alan Shiga, it didn't really matter who Quinnipiac threw at him. Anthony Lamb was going to get to the basket. He was going to put the ball in that hoop. And that's really parallel to a lot of other players in the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference that Quinnipiac sees on a night-in and night-out basis. Zane Waterman, a stretch 4, can play inside, can play outside for Manhattan. Same with Calvin Crawford. Matt Scott from Niagara and Phil Valenti are all 6'6" or taller and can play inside and outside. And Chase Daniels and Donovan Smith are way too slow, and Abdoulaye Bundu just isn't tall and strong enough.
We'll get to defense in a little bit, but I'm not concerned. Coming into the year, this was to be expected. The concern level is there. However, it didn't go increase or decrease because of the result. Vermont's a very good team, preseason #1 in the American East. They obviously have a lot of talent on offense and on defense. We saw it from Lamb. He was incredible in his freshman in his best collegiate debut. However, last year's starting lineup, Sam Dingba, Aaron Hutton, Chase Daniels, Dimitri Flores, James Ford. This year, Chase Daniels is the only player returning to that starting 5. A lot of turnover
That's
for Tom.
concerning.
That is, coming into the year, there was concern. But I don't think the concern level changed much based on the result. They got to play defense, though.
Well, guys, I'm sure
94 points.
I'm sure those hashtags will be trending, but that's all the time we've got for this week's episode of Bobcat Breakdown. We will not be having an episode next week due to Thanksgiving break, but on December 6th, Bobcat Breakdown will be having an hour-long special counting down the top 10 Quinnipiac athletes of the fall sports season. You won't want to miss it. You'll see interviews with coaches, athletes of the fall sports season as it comes to an end. But for now, check out our websites, q30television.com and theqbsn.com for postseason coverage. We will also have updates on social media at Q30 Sports and at QBSN on Twitter. For our analysts, Andrew Badillo and Maury Hirsch-Gordon, I'm Kyle Lavasser. Have a happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you next time.